I had just transferred to Crane, high junior year. New school, no friends. If you've ever been the new kid, you already know. It's not just awkward, it's isolating. The worst part, lunch. Juniors weren't allowed to leave campus, and inside the cafeteria, every table was already claimed. Like walking into a party you weren't invited to. I stood there, tray in hand, scanning for any open seat. Every table was packed, except one. It was shoved into a far corner, with only 2 students sitting there. They looked like twins, dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and an odd calm about them. I figured, what's the worst that could happen? And walked over. Mind if I sit here? I asked. They looked at each other for a second. One of them nodded. That's how I met Antonio and Bruno. They told me they were juniors too. Said they usually kept to themselves, but they were friendly, more than I expected. We talked about classes, teachers, the usual. Honestly, I felt a bit of relief. Maybe making friends here wouldn't be so hard. Before the lunch bell rang, they invited me to hang out that night. Said there was a cool spot near the cemetery just outside town. A little lake hidden in the woods. Creepy, sure, but I had no better plans. It was a Friday, and I figured, why not? Later that evening, I dropped off my stuff at home and got a text from Bruno. Still down to hang. Meet us by the cemetery around 9. I confirmed, grabbed a hoodie, headed out. The closer I got to the cemetery, the quieter everything became. I remember thinking, is this really what normal kids do? Meet strangers in the woods after dark. I texted Bruno when I arrived. He replied instantly, we're already here. We'll walk into the woods. We'll send you the spot. He dropped a pin, straight into the forest. I hesitated, but then I thought, come on, don't be dramatic. I clicked on the location and followed the trail. My flashlight barely cut through the thick black around me. Trees swayed above like shadows, watching in silence. Branches scratched at my arms as I moved forward. Bruno, I called out. Antonio, no answer. Just footsteps, not mine. They were slow, deliberate, crunching leaves behind me. I froze. This better not be a prank. Still nothing. I turned to leave. That's when the footsteps exploded into a sprint toward me. Before I could react, something clamped down on my neck, hard. Fingernails digging into my skin, cutting off my air. Then I heard it, a voice, close, too close. Grab him now. It was Bruno. Adrenaline took over. I twisted, shoved my elbow back, caught one of them off guard and broke free. I ran, full speed, dodging branches, barely able to breathe. I didn't stop until I hit the road, gasping, my chest on fire, but I didn't dare slow down. I didn't stop running until I got home. My parents were horrified. My neck had red marks where fingers had pressed in. They debated calling the cops, but I said no. I had proof. I showed them the texts, the location, everything. We reported it to the school, first thing Monday. And by the end of the day, both Antonio and Bruno were expelled. I blocked their numbers, thought it was over. But then, something happened. 1 week later, it was cold that night. I woke up shivering. My room was freezing, like someone had left the AC blasting. But we didn't even have central air. That's when I noticed it. My window was open, wide open. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds. It didn't make sense. It had been locked. I was sure of it. And even if it hadn't been, who the hell opens their window when it's 50 degrees outside? I walked over and shut it. Looked outside, just darkness. There was a ledge right below my window, about 4 feet wide, where you could stand if you climbed up. My dad always said it was an emergency escape route. I never thought of it as anything else, until that night I left my room and went to my parents. Did you open my window? I asked my mom. Half asleep, she blinked at me. What? No. Why? I told her. My voice started shaking. She sat up and shook my dad awake. His reaction, go back to sleep, you're paranoid. I turned around and headed back down the hallway, but something felt Wrong. I had left my door wide open. Now it was halfway shut. I stopped. Suddenly, I didn't want to go back in. I pushed the door slowly, just enough to peek through, and that's when I saw it, a figure, hunched, standing behind my door. My heart stopped. I couldn't scream. For a second, I just stared, like my brain was refusing to believe what I was seeing. Then I snapped. I screamed for my dad, so loud I felt it tear my throat. My bedroom door slammed shut, just as my dad came barreling down the hall. He shoved the door open and flipped on the light. We caught a glimpse, a single leg disappearing out the window. Dad rushed to the ledge and out the front door, but the person was gone. I knew who it was. Had to be one of the twins. We called the police. I told them everything again. The woods, the window, the figure in my room. But there wasn't enough evidence. No fingerprints, no ID, no arrest. They just told us to lock our doors and maybe install cameras. We did both. Nothing happened after that. No knocks, no texts, no open windows. But I never slept the same again. And every now and then, I'd catch myself staring at that ledge outside my window, wondering if they'd ever come back. It was freshman year, gym class, last period of the day. The skies outside were practically black, one of those gloomy fall afternoons where the clouds hang low and heavy, like they're waiting to break. We had a substitute that day, some older guy, maybe mid-50s, gray hair, rough looking, but not exactly frail. He didn't introduce himself with much energy, just took attendance, pacing through the rows of students with a clipboard in one hand and a bored look on his face. When he passed me, though, he slowed down. I felt it instantly, that second too long stare, not confused, not forgetful, just fixed, like he recognized me or was trying to memorize something. I brushed it off. Class started. We were told to get into volleyball teams, nothing serious. The sub wandered off into the hallway by the locker rooms and disappeared for 40 minutes. When the period finally ended, I went to the locker room to change and get out before the buses left, but my locker wouldn't open. I tried my usual combo, again, over and over, but it wouldn't click. I had to go tell the sub. He showed up a few minutes later, holding a thick binder, flipped through the pages, like he already knew exactly where to go. Then, without even asking, he walked into the girls' locker room with me. That wasn't normal. There was only one other girl left in there, finishing up getting changed. She looked just as surprised to see him walk in as I felt, but he ignored her, walked straight over to my locker, and started trying the combination from the book. It didn't work. Again, he spun the dial, then looked at me and laughed. I forced a smile. I didn't want to be rude. I was just trying to leave. He kept trying. Again, the combo failed. Then I felt it, his hand resting on my shoulder, not in a friendly, comforting way, just lingering. He muttered something like, "We'll figure this out," but his hand started to move, slowly, from my shoulder, sliding down toward my back. I took a step away, said, "It's okay, I'll just come back later. I'm gonna miss my bus." He tried the combo one last time, and the locker suddenly opened. He smiled, didn't say anything, just walked out. I waited until I heard the door close before I started getting changed. I moved fast. Every part of me just wanted to get out. Then the lights went off. Instant, I froze mid-change. Not a flicker, not dimming, just total darkness. At first, I thought maybe someone hit the wrong switch outside. But then I noticed silence. Not just quiet, stillness, like even the air had stopped moving. I tried to hurry, yanked up my pants, grabbed my backpack, and headed for the back exit of the locker room. It led straight outside, but as I reached the aisle between the lockers, something made me pause. You ever get that feeling someone's watching you? Like, even when you don't hear them, you feel them. I looked down the hall just for a second. There was enough light seeping in from a small rectangular window near the ceiling. barely, but it was enough to see him, the sub, peeking at me from behind the wall of lockers, just watching, standing still. I didn't wait to see what came next. I bolted. I sprinted down the row, heart pounding so hard I could hear it over my own breath. I threw the locker room door open and ran into the rain outside, soaked almost instantly. Didn't stop until I was off school grounds. I walked the rest of the way home, wet, shaking, and trying to process what had just happened. My mind kept going in circles. Why did he know my locker combo? Did he change it so I'd have to ask for help? Why did he come into the locker room with me? I never told anyone, not my parents, not my friends, not because I thought it wasn't serious, because I was embarrassed. I felt gross, confused, angry, but mostly ashamed. I just wanted to forget it happened. The weirdest part, he never showed up again. No one mentioned him. It was like he vanished, but I still think about it sometimes. What if the lights hadn't come back on? What if I hadn't run? And what was he planning to do when the door closed and I was completely alone? It was supposed to be an easy A. I was in the school band, mainly because it was either that, chorus, or orchestra, and band seemed like the least painful option. Our band teacher, Mr. Nicholson, had a pretty simple grading system. Show up to class and attend your weekly lesson, and you'd walk away with an A. But toward the end of the quarter, I was missing 2 lesson credits. Not ideal. So I went up to Mr. Nicholson after class, asking if I could make them up. He looked a little annoyed, like he didn't want to deal with it. But after a pause, he said, "All right, come in during your lunch tomorrow. I'll let you practice in one of the downstairs rooms." Downstairs, the music room basement. Anyone in band knew those rooms existed, but nobody liked going down there. Creepy lighting, no windows, old instruments stacked like corpses. It felt like a place meant to be forgotten, but whatever, I needed the grade. The next day, I brought my sax to the music room during lunch. Mr. Nicholson pointed me to the basement stairs and told me to grab one of the spare practice rooms. "Just leave the door open," he added. I didn't. Once I got to the basement, I immediately remembered why I hated it. The lights flickered, the air smelled like dust and mildew. There were rows of narrow doors lining both sides of the hallway, each leading into storage closets or tiny practice rooms, each barely the size of a bathroom stall. I picked one near the middle, stepped inside, and shut the door. Not because I wanted to practice, but because I was planning to scroll through my phone for 20 minutes and fake it. I propped up some sheet music on a stand, just in case Nicholson walked by, then sat back and pulled out my phone. That's when the lights went out, not just in my room, all of them. The hallway, the entire basement, total blackout. My first instinct was that it was just a breaker, maybe a storm, but I checked my phone, full bars, no outages. Then I heard something, a sound from the hallway. At first, it was like something being dragged, plastic scraping against concrete. I opened the door, using the dim glow of my phone to light the hallway. Just barely, I could make out the outline of a large storage bin being pulled from one of the rooms down the hall. Then the breathing started, not mine. Heavy, ragged breathing, followed by grunts, not human sounding, more like animalistic. The kind of sound you'd expect from someone struggling with rage or pain. I turned off my phone screen and stepped back into the room. Quietly, I didn't even think about it. My body just moved on instinct. I shut the door without a sound and backed into the corner, holding my breath. That's when it hit me. Whoever that was, whatever that was, didn't come down here until after the lights went out. I stood frozen in the dark for minutes that felt like hours. Then came a new feeling. You know when someone enters a room behind you, even if they don't say anything, you just feel it. That feeling swept over me like a cold wave. I raised my phone and tapped the home button, just enough light to flash the screen for half a second. There was someone in the corner of the room with me 3 feet away, staring, frozen, breathing like they hadn't taken a breath in minutes. I didn't scream. I didn't move. My brain was fighting between running or pretending I hadn't seen him. Then I felt it, a hand on my shoulder. First, a light tap, then a squeeze. That broke me. I lunged for the doorknob, hand scrambling to find it in the dark, and yanked the door open. The person inside tried to slam it back shut, but I was already gone. I ran down the hall, up the stairs, and didn't stop until I was in the main music room, where the lights were still on and everything looked normal. Mr. Nicholson was there, finishing up a flute lesson with a few students. I was breathless, wide-eyed, probably pale. He took one look at me and asked, "What happened?" I told him everything. He called security. They swept the basement and found the lights turned off at the panel, but no one down there. A few chairs were moved around. One of the bins was tipped over. No cameras, no witnesses, nothing. I sat out the rest of lunch with the flute section, shaking, trying to make sense of what happened. The next morning, I got called into the dean's office. I gave the same story, word for word. They believed me, sort of, but without proof. There wasn't much they could do. That basement was locked for a while after that. They said it was for equipment reorganization, but I knew the truth. They just didn't want any more incidents. To this day, I still don't know who or what I saw in that storage room. Was it a janitor, a squatter, some psycho who figured out how to sneak into the school, or something else entirely? All I know is I never went back down those stairs, and every time I hear that heavy plastic dragging sound, I freeze, because I swear I've heard it again since.